In my late 20s, back when I was still crazy, I became a limo driver for a company in Montreal that provides transportation for wedding and other special events. I have had my fair share of drunk and belligerent party guests, including the brides and the groom. If y'all ladies need condoms, I have a bag full of them in my glove compartment. Y'all tip me handsomely to keep them in store for you and to keep my mouth shut. I always made sure that the groom's limo driver was told, and eventually the groom finds out as well. But that will be after the wedding, so all the balance is paid in full. Of course, I need my cut. We are running a business here. It baffles me how these girls think I'm some kind of servant that swear an oath to secrecy. They think that a limo is some kind of special economic zone where all forms of debauchery is allowed, and what happens in the limo stays in the limo. After 3 years of driving mostly brides from bachelorette parties, watching them blow some Joe Blow with six-packs, doing drugs, and then on the wedding day I would pick them up all dressed up in their pearly white wedding gowns and watch them walk down the aisle and present herself to the groom, her future husband, as if she's some Virgin Mary. Never mind the night before or the weeks before the wedding, on the bachelorette party at the back of the limo, where she and her friends did some line of white powder on the dancer's junk. From my experience driving the brides to their bachelorette party, they feel like it's their one last hall pass to cheat on their fiancé. I can't fathom why some of these people decided to get married in the first place. Don't get me wrong, most brides don't cheat on their spouse at a bachelorette party, at least not in my limo, although occasionally I get an eyeful. Contrary to what you have heard, the limo driver doesn't just read newspapers. While we wait on you to finish, we do remember, and we are always watching you. We have a rear view mirror, and that back glass that is tinted to make you feel like we can't see you is an illusion. For the 3 years that I've drove a limo, I know of about 13 brides that cheated on their fiancé during a bachelorette party, 4 of which blow or bang the stripper in the limo while I was sitting on the limo driver's seat. I will share one of the craziest stories from my experience. A week before the wedding, my boss assigned us to drive a wedding party. I would drive the bride and my colleague would drive the groom. I was told to pick up a bridal party of 7 hands from an upscale bar downtown to an after party, then take them home after they are done. The super stretch limo was available, so I picked up the keys and drove it to the bar in the middle of the town. I called the number he gave me 10 minutes before I got there, so they will hop in the limo as soon as I arrive at the club. I know they wouldn't allow me to park in front of that particular upscale nightclub in that area, and I know the police will harass the hell out of me. When I spoke to the bride on the phone, she was slurring her words. That was when I knew it would be a long night, because it was just 10 p.m., which is too early to be drunk. When I got there, the bride had a bridal veil on. They went from a party of 7 to a party of 9. No worries, my super stretch limo can handle that capacity. It took them a while to come out of the club, even though I gave the bride about a 10 minutes heads up, and we had to stop along the way to pick up some stragglers. To sum up the party to 9 college-age girls, by the time we were en route to the after-party location, it was about 9 bridal party including the bride and her college friends. All that mattered to me at this point is my side hustle. I am not proud of this, but I was selling white powder and ecstasy as a side hustle back then. The champagne was included as part of the package, so they had alcohol in the limo. I had to make sure that the customers are comfortable and give me a good review. They told me that the after party was at a strip club, and they gave me the address. I noticed that they were a bunch of upper-class snowflakes. I could tell initially because they booked a section at the upscale nightclub that I just picked them up from. I asked them if they would like some music, and they told me what music they wanted. They asked me if they could smoke in the limo, and I said no. I knew they were rich, so I offered to sell them some ecstasy and white powder to enhance the party, and they jumped on my offer as expected. What was supposed to be a 45-minute ride to the strip club turned to a 2-hour ride. By the time we got to the strip joint, it was already like 1 or 2 something a.m. Mind you, I don't smoke or drink on the job, so I wasn't partying with them. I was just a professional limo driver, and my job is to drive and to control the chaos that I've created at the back of the limo. When we arrived at the strip joint, I dropped them off and parked my limo close by to wait for them to finish up so I can drive them home safely. 30 minutes later, the bride and her friends were blowing up my phone, telling me that they were kicked out of the strip joint. I pulled up the limo and picked them up. They wanted me to drive them to another strip joint. Before one of them came up with a brilliant idea to hire a stripper and have him performed in the limo while I drive. These women are so creative. That wasn't something that I would normally do, but I charged them extra up front, and I wasn't going to share it with the company I work for. It's just my cut. I was making a killing back then. Since they were a party of 9, I thought they would hire at least 2 dancers, but no, it was just one guy. They hired him from the club that they were kicked out of. I am not sure why they were kicked out, and I didn't care to ask. Now let me set the stage. I am driving with 9 college-age snow bunnies, with a male dancer, wearing nothing but a mankini. I drove to a secluded business district that was quiet because I didn't want to be driving around town with some drugged-up girls and a dancer at the back of my limo. I have to keep an eye on them. By the time I pull up to the business district empty parking lot, the party was already 20 to 30 minutes in. The ladies were all over the dancer. I looked back and the dancer had his junk out, and some line of powder was on it. As he goes around for the girls to sniff the line off his junk, all I was thinking about was how creative these ladies were, as if the night couldn't get any crazier. I noticed the cop pulling up at the parking lot where I parked because my limo seemed to be out of place in that area on an empty parking lot in an industrial district. I raised an alarm to everyone and they immediately hid the white powder and ecstasy by the time the cops arrived at my driver's side window. When I rolled down the window, I turned off the music and switched off the party lights so the cops can see that it was just a bridal party at the back. I spoke with the cops, explaining to them that it was just a bachelorette party and I prefer to park the limo instead of driving it around. They saw that I was telling the truth and the cop drove away. I then turned the music back on and the party resumed from where they left off. I turned on the party lights at the back of the limo and I could barely see everything that was going on from the driver's seat because the lights was dim. The dancer went around and the women were begging him to shove his junk down their throat, like some kind of game. Even the bride blew him too. We stayed in the parking lot for 2 more hours before they decided to call it a night, and I drove them home. The dancer didn't actually have intercourse with any of them in the limo, but I'm pretty sure all 9 of them tasted his junk and sniffed some powder from his junk. Even the bride. I was tipped very well and made a killing that night. 1 week later, I picked them up from the bride's house to drive them to the church. The same bride and her 8 bridesmaids were sitting around her in the limo while I drove them to her white wedding. I remember thinking how all of them could pass as nice people after sniffing white powder from a dancer's junk and blowing him a week ago. They didn't act guilty. They didn't feel ashamed or remorseful. It's like it never happened. The driver for the groom's party was an older colleague of mine that prefers driving groom's party than bridal party. He's older than me. The wedding planner coordinated our scheduling in such a way that I would arrive after the groom's limo. So when we drove to the church, the groom was already in the church and their limo was empty and parked at the church parking lot. After I dropped off the bride and parked my limo, I made a point of going into the church to watch her say I do. Poor guy. He had no idea who he's getting married to. I would pity him, but this is not uncommon. A lot of these brides are like that. So what she did wasn't special. I have 3 more stories of brides having sex with dancers in my limo, but nothing was as crazy as this one. Even though the dancer didn't have sex with any of them, just BJ. I always made sure that I exposed the bride to the groom, which eventually got me in trouble. I told the story to the groom's limo driver, and I asked him how the bachelor party went. He responded that the groom went with his friends to several bars, and he dropped them off at the hotel around 2 a.m. when the bars were closed. They didn't even drink the free champagne in the limo. It was just a regular boys' night out of bar hopping for the groom's party. I felt bad for the guy, and I made sure I slipped a note to him after the wedding. I am not sure what he did or whether they broke up, but I got snitched on, and I can tell you that I was eventually fired for exposing brides to groom and also for selling paraphernalia to the client.